638 Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Dan Mandis here in Nashville's Morning News, along with Johnny B. and Ken Weaver. You know, Ken and Johnny, we were having fun with AOC, where she told somebody to...
keep it pushing, bro.
Keep it pushing, bro. And we're trying to figure out what exactly it is that...
Keep it pushing, bro.
Well, apparently what that is a way to end a conversation or to dismiss someone. And so we've been having fun with this soundbite from Nikki Haley.
I promise you, our best days are yet to come.
Well, to that I say...
Keep it pushing, bro.
That's right.
I'm going to use that on my 16-year-old son today.
Yeah, keep it pushing.
Keep it pushing, bro.
Keep it pushing, bro.
See what he says.
Well, you know, Matthew Hurtt is a lot younger than the three of us, so let's find out. Matthew, our Grassroots political analyst, have you ever heard of that term?
Keep it pushing, bro.
Keep it pushing, bro.
Never heard of that, but we're going to keep it pushing right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Sure, that's what we're going to do. All right, so you heard the audio bite from Nikki Haley.
I promise you, our best days are yet to come.
All right, so pretty sure that was, I'm not sure if that was before or after she lost all the Coke money, but very quickly, let's talk about South Carolina. Of course, you know that Donald Trump did very well in South Carolina. I want to dig into the numbers a little bit. Was there anything there? Because there's some folks that are out there now saying, well, you know, within the demographics, within the numbers, there's some things to worry about. I mean, the former president winning with evangelicals, 71 to 29%, rural voters as well. But what some people are saying is that with Trump winning the conservative voters, 70 to 30%, what they're trying to say is, you know, well, the former president didn't get 30% of the Republican voters, and that should be a nightmare scenario for the Republicans. I don't know. What say you?
You know, this is Donald Trump won South Carolina handily. Of course, you and I have talked about this for weeks. Nikki Haley was done in New Hampshire. These numbers, it's all part of the horse race, and we still have several months to go before the convention and the election in November. Donald Trump has some work to do to bring these voters back into the fold. But in addition, you know, Nikki Haley and her supporters were reaching out to Democrats to get them to vote in South Carolina. So some of these numbers are a little off, I believe. I do know that Americans for Prosperity, which dropped their support over the weekend, was actively recruiting Democrats to vote in the Republican primary in South Carolina. It was covered on CNN over the weekend, and so some of these numbers are just fudged a little bit. But I do think that Donald Trump is running as if he were the general election nominee. I believe that is the smart way to run, and he should be working to bring those voters back into the fold for the opportunity to defeat Joe Biden in November.
How was the turnout in South Carolina? They say that South Carolina sees nearly 25% voter turnout for the GOP primary, according to the data. And as we've been talking about, the former president winning handily. Was it any worries about voter turnout? Because, you know, we've seen some polls that show that neither side is excited about, you know, their candidate, which I mean, to me seems kind of silly. Seems to me like there's a lot of people excited about Donald Trump. Go.
There's a lot of excitement for Donald Trump, but we do have to step back and look and say, you know, this is Joe Biden, who is clearly unfit for office. The Democrats don't even want him. There is a segment of Republican voters who are concerned about Donald Trump. We are now, as I've said before, in the longest general election in recent memory. We will be in this general election until November. This is the earliest point in the primary schedule where voters have assumed both parties' nominees, and I think it's pretty safe to assume that. And so I'm concerned for Republicans about fatigue over the next several months. And what Donald Trump has to do is recapture that energy, the energy that he brought to the race in 2016, I think is incredibly important. And he can recapture those individuals. You know, Donald Trump won 17 to 29-year-olds in South Carolina in the primary on Saturday. That's very encouraging. It bodes well as the Republican Party reaches out to young voters. He did well among other demographics, and I think it's going to take a positive message, a pro-American message that allows the American people to say, we were better under Donald Trump. This uncertainty of a Joe Biden administration is really not good for us. And we're going to give this guy a second chance. And I think we're going to see that messaging as we head into the convention this July, into the summer, and into the general election.
Daily Wire reporting No Labels chief expressing interest in Haley joining the ticket, the No Labels ticket. Now, as the longer that she stays in, with, of course, the Koch brothers we just talked about, Americans for Prosperity pulling their money. But bottom line is she's still raising money. And as long as she's running, she will still be able to raise money. They're talking about now perhaps she'll be part of the No Labels ticket. You think that's a reality, Nikki Haley going to No Labels?
Again, there's a lot of folks in I would say, the political science prognosticators. I got a call last week from someone out of Florida asking me to vote for anybody but Donald Trump from a third-party group that was trying to keep this non-nomination process going. No Labels is an interesting project in an upper division political science class, but it really doesn't play out in practicality in American politics. We've only seen it a couple of times with Ross Perot in the early 90s, and even with a little bit with Bernie Sanders in Vermont, but it takes a strong personality to run a successful independent or third-party run. And I don't think Nikki Haley has that. She's not particularly different from other Republican candidates who aren't Donald Trump. And I think there's just not a big chance that some third-party movement comes out of this election.
Matthew Hurtt is joining us. So a lot of buzz about Byron Donalds, a lot of buzz about Nikki, I should say. No, not Nikki Haley. It's Tulsi Gabbard going to Mar-a-Lago. And so I guess this is something that we're just going to keep talking about until there is actually a running mate named. So what's the latest that you're hearing? Then we'll get into Ronna McDaniel. She has stepped down as RNC chair. But first, the VP possibilities.
I really like Congressman Byron Donalds. The big question mark there is because he lives in Florida and Donald Trump lives in Florida, there's a provision in the Constitution that precludes two candidates coming from the same state. So you have to figure that out just a little bit. But Congressman Donalds is great. He works actually pretty closely with my friends here at Leadership Institute. But Tulsi Gabbard is another one that is a curious candidate. She famously left the Democratic Party. She actually was a pro-life activist in Hawaii in the early 2000s with her father. And she founded, after 9/11, her and her father founded essentially what was a Make America Great Again grassroots group in Hawaii. And that's something that not a lot of people know. Obviously, her military service is a significant boost, would be a significant boost to the ticket. I'm not sure how realistic her selection would be, but she definitely raises interesting questions. She plays sort of an interesting role in our American politics, sort of like the Democratic Justin Amash, the former congressman from Michigan from a number of years ago. I'm just not sure how that's going to play out. But now, Dan, we are in this period of discussion about who is going to be the vice presidential pick, and I think, like Donald Trump or like John McCain in elections past, is going to have to pick somebody who is going to shock and surprise the electorate and breathe life into what is going to be the longest general election cycle that we've ever experienced.
I wonder if it's going to feel even longer than we're talking about, because there's going to be a lot between now and November 5th. And personally, I can't wait. Ronna McDaniel is now tendered her resignation as head of the RNC. I mean, most people believe that she was a train wreck. I know that there's not a lot of folks who had faith in her, and RNC doesn't actually have a lot of money these days. Talk about the impact on Trump and the Republican Party now that she has officially tendered her resignation.
The emails went out this morning in the 6 o'clock hour Eastern time, and first came Ronna McDaniel, where she announced her resignation. I posted that email on my Substack. Just a few minutes later, Drew McKissick, the co-chairman, announced that he would also resign. answering any questions about where he would play, what role he would play in the RNC. Drew McKissick is the chairman of the South Carolina GOP, but he also serves as the RNC co-chairman. And the RNC will gather next week in Houston for their spring training, which isn't an officially called RNC meeting. I do believe the RNC will have to issue a call for the meeting to be able to handle the business of the RNC. So next Thursday or Friday, the RNC will gather and presumably elect a new chairman and a co-chairman. I'm not sure what that looks like. Obviously, the headlines show that Donald Trump is interested in Michael Whatley, who's the current chairman from North Carolina and the general counsel of the RNC, and potentially Laura Trump as the co-chairman. So the RNC members of the RNC have about 10 days to figure out if that's the direction they want to go. And usually the RNC sides with either the eminent nominee or the president if he is a Republican. So I think the RNC is probably going to go with Donald Trump's pick.
What is it about Laura Trump being the co-chair?
Yeah, it's an interesting selection, and it is unlike most selections for chairman or co-chairman in the past. There is one similar situation from the late Bush years, a gentleman by the name of Mel Martinez, who was a U.S. Senator from Florida and served in the Bush administration. He was sort of the hand-picked RNC chairman, and the members of the RNC and the Republican grassroots at the time openly revolted, and he was only in the role for about 7 months. But we haven't seen a situation like this where an eminent nominee has decided to select a family member in this role. But, I used to work for now Senator Marsha Blackburn. I volunteered on one of our congressional campaigns back in the 2000s. And, one of the things that she said was you select people that you trust to operate in these roles. And it is understandable that given the fact that there are many people who do not support Donald Trump, more establishment types, that you'd want to select someone that you could trust in the role as RNC co-chairman, which is sort of the role doesn't have a lot of responsibilities, but that person would be responsible for maybe helping raise money or traveling and hosting events, things that would energize the RNC and bring resources to bear in the committee.
Well, there's a lot of media outlets that will want to interview her as well. She's great on television. She's great during interviews. She's great as a person who speaks, very well, obviously for her father and everything that her father stands for and his record in the first term. So you're right. On the one hand, it feels a little weird, but on the other hand, Donald Trump clearly trusts her, and she is a good spokesperson for the values of Donald Trump, who is going to be our nominee. 6:52 on Super Talk 99.7. Matthew, how can folks find you on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter at Matthew Hurtt, MatthewHurtt.